community pools, pretty much anywhere that I can, so that we can share the fun of Maker Camp. I'm also the author of the Big Book of Maker Camp projects. This has over 100 different projects in it that you can use either at home with your family right now. You can get it digitally through your library or online, or you can use it to start your own camp this summer. Hopefully, we'll all be able to see each other a little bit more this fall and summer. I am a STEM educator and a makerspace coordinator and a mom. And today I am super excited to share with you our upcycled Victory Garden workshop. Isn't that awesome? Earth Day is right around the corner, so it's really important that we stop and take a little time right now to get our hands in the dirt, to connect to the earth, to think about the ways that we can make all of our systems better and our planet better and a little bit more sustainable and environmentally friendly. And it's surprisingly easy to do. We call this our Victory Garden workshop today. And there's a really special reason for that. Victory gardens have been used throughout our history for over 100 years now as a way for people to build morale during difficult times in our country's history, specifically during 2 world wars. They've been used for people to be able to connect with their communities and with their families. They've been used to help people grow healthier, better food that they can harvest right from their own backyard, rather than having to rely on perhaps more challenging ways to get food. And they're also really great if you're on a tight budget. They're really great if you want to be sustainable and take care of the earth. Starting a garden, a Victory Garden especially, right now is one way that you can help make sure that your family is going to have everything that they need this summer and do something really special together. So I feel like we're in kind of a stressful situation right now, but it's spring in many areas. Summer is coming. That is a traditional time that is easy to grow things. Now, I don't want you to think that you have to have a big lawn and a huge garden out back to be able to do this, because you don't. You can grow your own food inside on a windowsill. You can grow it on a little balcony. You can grow it on the back deck or the front porch. And if people grow vegetables up the side of their buildings. They grow it on roofs of buildings if you're in an apartment building. And if you have a yard, yeah, you can absolutely start a garden, either with containers or with raised beds or just by digging into the soil. Now, I'm going to go and gather all my supplies together. But while I do that, I have a challenge for you. I want you to think, if you were going to make an Earth Day poster or a Victory Garden poster, what would that look like? I bet I have some great artists out there. I want you to grab some markers or some crayons or some pencils and start on a little poster for your family, for your Victory Garden. And make sure, with your parents' permission, that you share that with us, okay? All right, so get drawing while I go and get some supplies. I'll see you back here in just a moment. Okay, welcome back. So I thought that the first projects we should start with are basically things that you can grow indoors right on your kitchen windowsill or in any sunny spot. They're all really easy, very inexpensive, and in most cases will give you pretty quick results. So the first and easiest thing to do is to take vegetables that you can get a second growth from, okay? And you'd be surprised how many things this covers. Let me grab my tray here. Okay, so I have the end of a stalk of celery, a bunch of celery. So I've cut it about 1 inch or 2 above the root, and this is really easy. And you can do the same thing with lettuce, cabbage, leeks, or any of those kinds of things. All you have to do, get a bowl. Okay, so I've got a nice bowl here. I'm going to put 1 inch or 2 of water in the bottom. You don't want to go more than halfway up the side of your vegetable. You're going to put it in there, and then you are just going to, where did I put my mister? Oh, I've lost it. Okay, well, it's right there in front of me. Okay, so you're just going to use a little spray bottle and just mist it a couple times a day. And what will happen is it'll start to form roots in the water, and little stalks will come up, or little leaves will come up from your lettuce or your cabbage. And you can pick those leaves and enjoy them. And that's often what I'll do with scraps of lettuce. I'll just leave them sitting there and eat the baby lettuce as it comes up. But if you want, you can then transfer that into potted soil. Okay, so a little potting soil in a container, or if it starts getting nice outside, you can transfer it right into your garden and grow a whole nother head or a whole nother stalk of celery or a whole nother head of romaine. With celery, I honestly like to just take the leaves and throw them into salad or throw them right into stir fry. It's really easy to do. The tops of carrots, you can do the same thing. You won't end up with a carrot from it, but you'll get the leafy greens up on top. And certain other things like beets and turnips, you may be able to get to do that too. Those greens are really nutritious, really delicious, and just kind of give you a little variety if you're getting a little tired of your same old iceberg, right? So that's the easiest thing to do. When you get down to the bottom of these, spray them into a bowl of water and just keep them moist and enjoy. Now, another easy thing that you can do, onions. And this one's a little worse for wear, but you can see they start to sprout, the green bits. And onions, garlic, leeks, shallots, all those kinds of plants will do this, green onions too. When that happens, you can actually take off the outer peel and transfer it right into an inch or two of soil, potting soil. And that will let them start to grow. Now, mostly, you're going to be interested in harvesting the delicious greens that come from the top. Garlic scrapes, they call them, the greens that come from the top of garlic, delicious in stir fries, delicious in a lot of different dishes. Same with the greens of the onions. You can use that in 100 different ways. If you want to, you can transfer these outside to a garden or a large container later on in the year and grow them and get more garlic or more onions from them. But that's going to take quite a bit of time to do because they actually need cold weather. So I just throw these right into a bowl or right into a little bit of soil and put them on the windowsill and let those greens grow. And then I just clip the greens and enjoy them. And they'll just keep on going if you keep them from rotting. So onions and garlic, another easy one to grow. You may not realize it, but potatoes are actually pretty easy to grow inside. This is a sweet potato. My family tends to prefer sweet potatoes, and you can find on them little divots, little darker spots, and we call them eyes. You see the same thing on a regular old Idaho potato, any potato. That's where new stems and roots form from on these kinds of vegetables, these roots. So you're going to take some toothpicks, okay? You're just going to stick your toothpicks right on in to your potato. And again, this is for sweet potatoes. Get your toothpicks in there, okay? You're going to decide which side looks like it has the most eyes to come on up. And you want some of the eyes you want in the water to form roots, some you want to come on up. Right into a jar. Fill the jar with water until it's touching your sweet potato. And again, just keep it moist, and eventually you will start to see the sweet potato start to grow. When that happens and you start getting vines, that sweet potato then needs to go into either a container or into your garden. If you want to do regular potatoes, you're going to cut your potatoes so that it has at least 1 or 2 eyes on it. Nice big chunks, like 2-inch chunks. And you can put those directly into the soil this time of year. If you were going to save them for like next year, you'd want those cut edges to dry and harden a little bit so you could store them. But you can put them right on into some soil. Now, if you don't have a lot of garden space, you can grow things like potatoes in these garden bags. So this one's a big one. This is a commercially bought one. And it's made from a recycled plastic. You can see it's got some holes on the bottom here for drainage. And it's got handles, so it's easy to move if I need to. And this one actually has a little Velcro panel on it, if I can get it to open. So it's got a little Velcro panel that opens so you can harvest directly from the bag. So this is like a really fancy, nice version. You can buy these online. If you don't have those, you can plant into any large container. If you happen to have cats and you have like those bins of kitty litter, wash those out well. You can use those after putting some drainage holes in it. But another easy way to do bags is a lot of cat food, dog food, in this case chicken food, come in those same kind of plasticized bags to keep the food waterproof and safe. You can use these to grow your vegetables in. You're just going to put a couple holes in the bottom, get your potting soil in there, and fold down the edges to kind of make a cuff. And then with your potatoes, as they start to grow, you're going to cover them with more and more dirt, okay, so that the potatoes can form under the dirt. And so by the end of the season, you'll have filled the bag and you can dig in there and get your potatoes out. So you can grow those on a deck or a porch, okay, as long as they've got good sun. And you don't have to have any kind of fancy equipment for it. So those are some really easy ways that you can take scraps that might have otherwise gone into the trash and make some new food and lovely, tasty treats out of them. So I'm going to put these aside now because I've got another really fun activity for you. All right. If you want to be able to grow something in just a couple of days, maximum a week, and have something tasty for a salad or a stir fry, you're looking for sprouts, okay, sprouts. Sprouts are super easy to grow, and you can use a lot of different seeds. You can go online or go to the store, and a lot of garden supply centers and like Home Depot will have sprouting mixes already mixed up for you in different types. But you can put your own together very easily. Some seeds, let me check my notes here. I wrote it down. Some seeds that are great for sprouts. Alfalfa sprout, oh, that's delicious. Bean sprouts, I personally love to get mung beans. You can buy them right in the international aisle of your grocery store. Lentils, chickpeas, they all work too. You can also try radish sprouts, beets, peas, sunflower seeds. Like I have, this is just organic sunflower seeds, raw, not cooked, not salted, nothing. They'll sprout. Lettuce seeds will work. There are so many different things you can sprout that you can find right in the grocery store. You don't even need to go anywhere special. You don't need to order something special online. You can try it at home very easily. So here's what you're going to do. I put together a little blend here. This is a blend of some flaxseed, quinoa, millet, and some amaranth. So I really like ancient greens. So I just kind of mix them up in a jar. And I've got another nice, clean jar here that I put through the dishwasher. Okay. You never want to fill your jar for sprouting more than a quarter of the space, because those sprouts are going to grow and take up more space as they take on water. So a tablespoon or two in a jar like this work just fine. This is just, you know, your standard mason jar. An old pickle jar or whatever you've got will work too, no problem. And you're just going to go ahead and put some seeds in there. And again, whatever mix you want to use. Okay. And I got seed mixes all over the place already. Going to take good water. If you've got filtered water, awesome. If not, tap water will totally work. Just fill it. You don't want to go all the way to the top. You're going to end up with a mess. So we're going to want these to soak overnight to start that germination process. The seed needs to get a little bit of water inside and wake up all the chemical activity in that seed so it can start the sprouting process. And so it needs to sit in water overnight. I like to put it in my pantry or somewhere shady because you don't want it to get a whole lot of light at this point. Now, you don't want to go putting this jar top right back on at this point. You do need some air in there. So you can buy commercial tops. They actually sell tops that twist right on that have a grid on them or little holes. You can, if you really wanted to, you could put holes in this. But the easiest thing to do is just a little bit of cheesecloth or maybe an old cloth napkin, even an old bandana that you may have around. You're just going to cover your jar using a rubber band. And the goal here is just to keep out any contaminants from being able to fall in while still allowing airflow for your sprouts. So there we go. We've got our cheesecloth on. We've got our sprouts soaking. Now they're going to sit overnight like that. And the next day, you're going to leave your cheesecloth on and you're just going to very gently give them a swirl and you're going to drain off all that liquid. And you see how the cheesecloth is keeping my seeds in there so they're not falling out? You're just going to drain that off. You're going to want to rinse them 2 or 3 more times. You'll notice that they'll get kind of foamy and stuff like that. That's fine. That's what's supposed to happen. That means that they're starting to create enzymes to wake up. So you're going to rinse them 2 or 3 times and then just leave them without the water. Okay, just damp. And you might want to do that again at lunchtime. So if you do that in the morning, do it maybe at lunch, maybe before you go to bed, 2 or 3 times a day just to keep them moist. Again, keep them in a dark place. They do not need light at this point. They're not full-grown plants or doing photosynthesis. They just need water and warmth. So you're going to do that for a couple days, depending on your seed. Some start very quickly. Radish seeds you'll have in 2 or 3 days. Things like beans and chickpeas and lentils might take a little bit longer. Those larger seeds too, you may want to dehull, which means they're going to have kind of the skin on the outside is going to be in your seed, in your sprout mixture. So you may want to separate those by just kind of rinsing them really well. Once you've got your sprouts, okay, you're going to drain them one last time. You're going to rinse them really, really well, kind of pat them dry a little bit, and then put them in a glass or plastic container. If you have a plastic bag, that will work too, with a damp paper towel or a cloth napkin that you've dampened, and that will keep your sprouts nice and fresh. You're going to put them in the refrigerator and eat them within a couple of days. You don't want your sprouts sitting around for a long time. They get gross, okay? They get kind of slimy. And that brings me to my next point. Some people really are concerned with sprouts because they can grow bacteria on them. And that can make you sick if you're not careful. So you really want to make sure that you handle your sprouts once they're grown in really safe ways. Alternatively, I'm just going to pat my seeds down there. Alternatively, you can grow microgreens. You can use basically the same seeds that you would for sprouting, but instead, we're going to grow them in soil. I like to use these little takeout containers, but you can use a big tray. If you've got like an old brownie tray that nobody's using, you can, of course, buy commercial preparations for either of these. There are nice sprouting sets that give you multiple levels. They're nice things meant for microgreens, but any shallow, relatively shallow dish will work. I mean, an old pie plate will work, okay? So all you're going to do, and some of the things that are really good for microgreens, checking my cheat sheet again, let's see, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, mustard, chia seeds, sunflower, buckwheat. You can also try radish, different herb seeds, peas, beets, chard, kale, cabbage, kohlrabi, and lettuces. So a little bit of everything. Now, the key to microgreens is that you're going to harvest them long before they're putting on lots of leaves. You're going to harvest them when they're only 2 or 3 inches tall. The cool thing about microgreens as opposed to sprouts, there's less chance of any bacteria growing because you're basically going to clip them, harvest them, and eat them right away. So they're not sitting around the fridge usually. And they have a little bit more of the flavor of the individual seed. So like a radish microgreen will have a little bit of spiciness to it. That the sprout has some of that flavor, but not maybe as much. So if you really like the flavor of your sprouts, you may want to try microgreens. Anyway, all we're going to do, I've got some basic potting soil. Okay, any kind of potting soil will work. If you have like a peat moss blend, really it's just there to give the seeds something to start in. You don't want to fill this all the way. You want to leave space because when you water it, you don't want the soil to go flowing out of your container. So there we go. We're just going to kind of pat that down, not too hard because we want to give plenty of space for the roots to grow. Now, you know, this is a great opportunity to reuse soil because it doesn't need a ton of nutrition. You're going to be harvesting these pretty quickly. So they're not going to be taking a whole lot of nutrition from the soil. You don't need to really fertilize it. If you've got soil from maybe potted plants or something that you want to reuse, bake it at 180 degrees Fahrenheit for about 45 minutes. I know that sounds a little crazy, but it kills off any bacteria and sterilizes your soil. Dampen it. You want to make sure this is damp before we even put our seeds in. So I'm going to spray it down. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my seeds. I really like buckwheat. And I love spicy things like radishes. I'm just going to use some of my sunflower seeds right now to do my microgreens. And you can see, and I'll show you in a moment, you don't have to worry too much about spacing with this because they're not going to get a chance to really compete for resources. They're not going to get too big. So you can kind of pack your seeds in here really well and get a pretty good turnout. I like to keep 2 or 3 of these going at all times. So I'll do 2 or 3 on a Sunday afternoon, and then the following Sunday I'll plant another 3. That way I have a staggered harvest for these. So there we go. We've got our seeds in. I'll show you. See how they're pretty packed in there. You don't have to give them too much space. You're going to be clipping them anyway. Just going to put a light coating of soil over them. You like my little Halloween bowl? It was the only bowl I could find this morning for my soil. So a little bit of soil over them. Just pat that down, put them to bed, right, like that. And I'm just going to spray. Get it nice and wet. You're going to spray this down 2 or 3 times a day, just like you would with sprouts. You need to keep them nice and moist so that they grow quickly. Spray. And then take the top and pop it right on there to give it a little bit of a greenhouse. Keep them nice and toasty warm. These you want to place somewhere warm and with light because they're going to need the light as they grow. They are going to start doing photosynthesis. When they're about 2 to 3 inches high and they've got tiny little leaves on them, you're just going to get a nice sharp pair of scissors like these, and you're just going to clip them right next to the soil. Take them, eat them, and enjoy. I love them on salads. I throw them on sandwiches all the time. They're very nutritious, lots of good nutrients just kind of bursting forth, lots of enzymes, lots of amino acids. So that's a really easy way, either with sprouts or with microgreens, to get your veggies all year round really easily and inexpensively with things that you can get right from the grocery store. Now we're going to talk about starting some plants that we can actually bring outside into containers or put into our garden. So bigger plants that we're going to start indoors early in spring and then wait until after the frost date to actually bring outside and plant. Now you might be saying, frost date, what does that mean? That's the last day that we expect that there may be a frost where everything's going to go below freezing. Your plants are not going to like that. Most of your plants are not going to enjoy that. So what we want to do is make sure that we wait until that chance of freezing is gone and then move our plants outside. So often what we'll start is we'll start our plants inside, maybe under a grow light if you have one, or in a sunny window, so that they can get started early, and then all we have to do is get them outside and you get a jump start on your garden that way. So I have 2 projects to help you do that. The first, we're going to make some nice little pots out of just some upcycled newspaper. And then in the second, we're actually going to use newspaper again, and we're going to make seed tape so that maybe some crops that we can't quite start yet, we're going to put together, lay out the seeds, and all we have to do when it's the right time is just plant them into the soil, and we're ready to go. So what do we need? We're going to start with a pair of scissors. Okay, we got our tools. We need scissors, a ruler or a tape measure, a good pencil. We're going to need a little bit of masking tape, can help us out with this. Obviously, we need our seeds. In this case, I'm going to plant cucumbers that I'm going to get started in my little pots for later. And I'm going to plant radishes, get my radishes started on seed tapes. For all of this, we're going to need some newspaper, okay? You don't want the glossy kind. You don't want magazines or glossy flyers. You want matte newspaper, okay? You want to double check, make sure if you can that this is not any kind of lead-based ink or anything like that. You don't want to put that in the ground, and all of this is going to be going in the ground. Most places use a soy-based ink these days or a vegetable-based ink, so you should be safe. If you're not sure, usually you can find that information somewhere on the paper itself. If you're really concerned, just call the newspaper and they'll tell you. So you're going to need plenty of that. And then for our seed tapes, we are also going to need some flour. Okay, just standard kitchen flour, all-purpose flour. If you are gluten-free, rice flour will work, or a gluten-free mix will work. I have not found that cornstarch works very well, so I wouldn't suggest that. But all-purpose flour works really well. You're going to need a little measuring spoon, paintbrush, and again, the same supplies we have here. And of course, we're going to need water, because our plants need water to live, and potting soil. I also like, for my little pots I'm going to make out of newspaper, I like to use a round tray of some sort. You can use a pie plate. You can use a round dish like this. If you have a square one, use a square one. But you want to have something to kind of hold them all together because they're not strong like a peat pot or a plastic pot might be. And so by packing them all in together, they kind of hold their shape a little bit better. So something like that. I like to use plastic. You don't want to use paper for this because you don't want it to get soggy. Plastic or aluminum work really well. So this is just a takeout. All right, let's get started with our little pots to start our cucumbers. These are really, really easy to make. Oh, I forgot to go over the most important item for this. Can. This is a 6-ounce can like you'd get for tomato paste. Okay, and you can see I haven't even opened the can. If you have opened the can, make sure you put some of that masking tape around the edges so that we don't cut ourselves on that. Anything about that size. This is about 2 inches wide, 5.5 centimeters. A soda can will work. You don't really want to get too much bigger than that. You know, you don't want to use like the big can of tomatoes. So try to find something kind of small. Anything about that size will work. It could be a glass jar, you know, an olive jar might work. This is just going to be there to mold our pot around. So you'd only need one per person, you know, or one to share. You can make these pretty quickly, so you don't need to go finding like a whole case of them. But get creative. Like I said, about 2 inches across, 3 inches across is about the right size. Okay, all we're gonna do is try and make some space here. Okay. I'm just gonna take my ruler and I'm actually gonna mark on my paper. Okay, marks all the way along at that 3.5 inches for my can. And these don't have to be perfect at all. All right. But there we go. And then I'm just going to connect the dots, right? Line up my ruler, connect the dots, and boom, draw a nice line. From there, I'm just going to use my scissors to cut right along. If you happen to have one of these rotary cutters or a paper cutter, that can make this a lot quicker. And I'm just going to come in here, cut right along my line. And I've got a piece of paper ready to go for my pot. Okay, now I'm just going to use this can as a mold for my pot. When I'm doing this, I want to make sure that I don't line up my paper all the way up against the edge of the can, because it'll be hard to remove the can once I do that. Also, if you are using a can that's already been opened, make sure you put a little masking tape along the edges so that you don't risk getting cut as you're doing this. That would be no fun at all. We don't want that to happen. I'm going to tear off a couple pieces of masking tape. Okay, here we go. So, very simple to do. We want to make sure that we're coming down about 1 inch, you know, that first knuckle. Just hold it in place. This doesn't have to be perfect. Rolling. And you don't want it too tight because it'll be harder to get the can out. So just roll, roll, roll. That's it. Round and round we go. And there we go. Now I like to use a little piece of tape right here to hold it in place. You're going to remove this masking tape before you actually plant anything because you don't want that adhesive in your garden. Now we got to do the bottom. Okay. Just like wrapping a present, fold it in to your bottom, crease it well, fold the other side, crease it, and then fold those in together. Now, you notice here I have a little bit of a hole, not the end of the world, okay? That'll just be a little bit of drainage. I'm gonna press it now against the table, really kind of make sure that, whoa, shook the camera, make sure that's pressed in really well. If you want, again, a little piece of masking tape right here can hold everything in place. And that's really all you need to do. There you go. And there we go. I've got a nice little pot filled with soil, some seeds ready to go. All I need to do is add some water and put it somewhere nice and bright. And you can do a bunch of the pots and line them up and then just throw the soil in. You don't have to do them one at a time. So that's really easy. Now, what if you have things like beets or Swiss chard that you don't want to put into the ground now, that don't need to be started quite yet because they're not going to be grown until June or July. What you can do is create seed tapes. I especially love seed tapes for you know, tiny things like carrots or beets, things that you usually need to thin out or that need really tiny placement, because personally I find those just annoying. I just do. So I like to do seed tapes for them. Then it's easy. When it's the right time, I just go out, I lay my seed tape in, I cover it with some dirt, I water it, and the nice thing is I've got them ready to go. So every week I put a new seed tape in, and I have a nice progression of like leafy greens ready to go every week. Okay, so they're not all growing and coming to harvest at the same time. I'm gonna get my newspaper again. Now you can use toilet paper or paper towel, single ply, to do this instead, but I really prefer to use upcycled stuff. I mean, I've got this anyway, it's gotta be recycled, reduce, reuse, recycle, right? You're only gonna need one layer of it, so I typically will cut multiple layers at once, but you want the thinnest layer that you can get. For this, you want your seed tape to be maybe an inch and a half wide. So I'm going to do the same thing I did before. Just mark off my 1 inch mark like that in a couple different spots and connect the dots. Okay. Once again, I'm going to come in with my scissors and cut. There we go. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's all going to go into the ground and decompose anyway. So it really does not matter if it's perfect. I'm just going to take one of these strips for now and lay it out. Now, you need to check your package and figure out what, for example, like this, it says to thin to 2 inches. Okay, so I'm going to lay out my seeds on my seed strip at the thinned out placement, not as if I was planting them directly into the ground. That means you want to use good, fresh seeds, because if you're not using fresh seeds for this year's seeds, you may end up with a situation where not all of them germinate and you get gaps. So make sure you're using fresh seeds. We need to make a little paste. So you're just going to mix about 1 tablespoon of flour with 1 tablespoon of water to get this kind of goop. Okay, you want a nice thick paste. I've tried cornstarch. I don't find that works very well. Gluten-free flours work okay, especially like brown rice flours get nice and goopy. But you want them to be kind of sticky because we're going to use that to hold the seeds in place. Now, as you can see, I have marks on my mat, but you can use a ruler. This actually says to plant your seeds every 2 inches for these radishes. So what I'm going to do is just mark. I'm going to give it an inch from the end. I always find that helps just in case I need to like tuck this into the dirt. And I'm just going to mark every 2 inches with my pencil all the way along my seed strip. Okay. And then I'm going to come in. I'm going to bring my paste. I'm just going to put a little dab on each of those spots very easily with an old paintbrush. You could use your popsicle stick for this. You could use your finger for this if you really wanted to. I think I might have messed up a little bit, and this is where it's good to have that ruler just to check. Oh, yep. Somehow I managed to mess that one up. Always have that ruler just to double check. And then using tweezers or another paintbrush or your fingers, I'm just going to plunk my little seed into each of those spots. Now, you may want to put a little bit more on top of each one because we're going to put another layer of paper over everything just to keep all the seeds inside. So I'm just going to put all my little seeds in there. Where are we? There we go. Then I'm going to come back in and I'm just going to kind of put a little bit, make sure that they're kind of into that paste so that they don't fall off. And this gets a little sticky. Okay, that's okay. A little extra. There we go. That looks good. And then I'm just going to come in here and paint a little bit in between now that I know I've got my seeds spaced out properly. Oop, sticky. This is fun. It's like making paper mache. If you like doing that, it's the same kind of deal. So I'm just going to put a little bit of my paste in between my seeds. And then normally I would cut a whole separate strip. Here, I'm just going to pretend I'm making for like a container. And that's what I like about this is that you can figure out the size of your beds and make your strips exactly what you need for your planting situation. You know, you don't have to rely on something that's made for maybe a generic situation. You can make it just the way you want. Now, try not to do what I just did there. I moved my seed. Just press down. Okay? And there you go. Your seed strip is all ready. And all that is all natural. It'll decompose into the soil as your seeds are ready to germinate. You're going to let this dry completely. Once it's 100% nice and dry, what I like to do is I get a toilet paper roll, okay, and I write radish on it since I just did radish strips, and I wrap them around the toilet paper roll, use a rubber band to hold them into place, And that way I can put, 3 or 4 strips onto each roll. And then I tuck the seed packet with all the instructions into the roll so that I have them when I go to plant. And I know like how deep these need to be planted and all that kind of information when they need to get planted. So I've got all the information in the toilet paper roll and I'm good to go. And I can have all my seed tapes ready to go and just plant them. And I like to plant, 1 or 2 every week. So I stagger my vegetables so I don't get a huge harvest of all radishes all at once. Okay, so maybe you don't have a lot of space or you need to do your gardening indoor. Maybe you don't have a whole lot of resources or just want to try something new. Hydroponics has been around a long time and it lets you grow food really efficiently in really small spaces and sometimes much more quickly than you do in traditional methods by planting in the garden or in soil containers. Hydroponics, as you can kind of tell by the name, means that you grow in water or liquid instead of soil. Traditionally, soil exists for a couple of reasons for plants, right? Plants need water, sunlight, and dirt. But what they get from dirt is often the ability to hold water for the roots, right? Because a plant can't get up and go to the kitchen and get a glass of water. It needs to be able to send its roots out and bring that water in. So soil holds water for the plants. The other thing it provides is a little bit of structure so that those roots can hold up the plant so it's not laying on the ground. So it can reach to the light and get some air around it so it's not as prone to mold or fungus, things like that. And lastly, and most importantly, the soil provides nutrition for our plants. A plant can't go to the sandwich shop and get itself a club sandwich. It needs to get all of its vitamins and minerals from the dirt. So traditionally, when we grow in a garden, we want to make sure that we're putting compost into our soil and making sure it's really rich and provides all these things for our plants. But we can reproduce that using just liquid with hydroponics. Today, we're going to focus on media-supported hydroponics. There are many, many types of hydroponics out there, systems where you can use just liquid. They're a little more challenging to set up, so I wanted to go with 2 that are super simple to do and that you can basically build with stuff you probably have around the house. For this project, you are going to need either a soda bottle or a disposable water bottle. Really, whatever you have around. If you're doing a larger plant, like you want to try maybe some cucumbers, you're going to want the soda bottle. If you're just doing some herbs like I have here, or a little bit of lettuce or something like that, disposable water bottles, just fine. You're going to need a pair of scissors, okay? Oh, I always forget this part. See that? You need the top for this project. If you don't have the top, you may be able to work with a little bit of foil or something like that, but having the top is really, really helpful. You're going to need a pair of scissors. You can use a ruler if you want. I usually just eyeball this. You're going to need a sock, preferably mostly cotton. You don't want like a nylon sock or something like that because you want it to be able to wick our liquid. So you're going to need a little sock. And then you are also going to need your media for your hydroponics, okay, or a matrix. Instead of soil, we talk about media. And you're going to need your liquid nutrient solution. Okay, so in both of these systems, it's very similar. This one is what we call an ebb and flow system, where you literally are just going to every couple of hours, pour a little bit of liquid nutrient solution over the system and let it drain down. And then you can reuse what's in your reservoir. But you have to remember to do that a couple times a day. Or you can set up with like a fish pump, an aquarium pump, a system that pumps your liquid from the bottom up to the top and just does that on a timer. And you can find a lot of plans for doing that online. It's not too hard. Mostly, if you have these in your kitchen window, just remember to pour some over every couple of hours. This is really great for plants that don't mind maybe drying out just a little bit. Wonderful for herbs. In fact, if you go to the grocery store and find fresh herbs that still have the root on, put them in a bowl of water, let them wake back up and start growing and sprouting again. After you've harvested most of the leaves, let them start sprouting again. And then you can transfer them to a system like this and they'll do wonderfully. Ebb and flow systems tend to use things like gravel or sand. So they're the media you can use over and over and over again without having to worry about it. And they're very easy to set up. This system is a wicking system, and that's what we're going to focus on our build today. What's nice about this is that it pulls the nutrient solution up into our media, and it keeps that system going all by itself. Now, if you don't have hydroponic grow media and liquid nutrients, or you just don't want to bother with that, this also works great as a self-watering planter. You're just going to want to make sure you use really good quality potting soil in there, and maybe make that top portion a little bit larger than we're going to today, because it's going to need to provide everything for that plant. But you can still use it as a self-watering planter too, okay? Let's take a second to talk about the different media we're going to use. Okay, I just want to talk for a moment about different media that we can use. The easiest, of course, the cheapest, and what will last you forever and ever and ever is your basic pea gravel. Okay, this doesn't affect the chemistry very much of your setup, and it's pretty easy to find. This is actually aquarium gravel. Just remember, if you're going to use gravel, you want to make sure it's thoroughly cleaned and dried first. So usually you want to wash it with a 10% bleach solution, or with a bit of peroxide, rinse it and let it dry. You don't want any kind of bacteria on your gravel. So this is your basic kind of pea gravel. It's rounded, that kind of thing. This works really nice. This is a little on the small side. You really want something that's in the 3/8 to 5/8 inch category, but this works. Now, some people prefer what we call sharps when it comes to gravel, and it's flatter, obviously. It's broken, it's not rounded like a pea gravel is. Now, the feeling is that this actually has more surface area, more space that water can hold on to. So when you're using an ebb and flow system, you want as much moisture to be retained as possible, so you don't have to water too often. So this can be really great for that. The problem is a lot of these micas and stuff can affect the pH of your nutrient solution, and can affect the pH of your hydroponics, which means that it could hurt your plants. So you have to be very careful if you're going to use this, that you're not using something that's going to have burned roots or whatever. But this works really well. It's very easy to find. It may be in your driveway right now. Again, if you're going to use this, you need to make sure you clean it. This is vermiculite. It is actually a volcanic clay. It's a natural substance, but it's really lightweight, really lightweight. It holds on to moisture really well. It comes sterilized. You can buy it at a garden center. These kinds of media, there are others similar. They work really nicely. They hold on to water really nicely. They're very lightweight. They are a little more expensive though. But if you have some of this vermiculite or something similar, that can work really nicely as a media for hydroponics as well. Give that a shot. And then this is the commercial hydroponic blend that I typically use. And what it's got in here is it's got some perlite, which is very similar to vermiculite. Again, another like a very porous clay. And then it's mostly got coconut core. It's the kind of the waste product from coconuts, is that fuzzy stuff on the outside. This doesn't have any nutritional value. I know it looks very much like potting soil, but it doesn't have the nutritional value potting soil does. It doesn't have any fertilizer in it. It has no compost. It's really just there to hold moisture and to give the plant something to root in. Okay, so once you've selected what you're going to use, that's going to kind of decide what system you're going to do. If you're doing a gravel, or sand or a vermiculite, you're probably going to do an ebb and flow system, because these can't pull the water up through a wick. You have to pour it down over and let it kind of sit in there. Succulents work great in this too. So if you're going with that, you're going to build everything, but you're not going to bother with the cotton sock for the wick. If you're building our wicking system, you're going to go through the whole build. This is great for just about any plant, okay? So let's get started. I'm going to move these out of the way. Got my bottle. For a second there, I didn't know where I put it. Okay. This is really simple. You take top off your bottle, and you're going to eyeball. I like to do about 1/3 of the bottle. If you're doing this as a regular planter with potting soil, you're probably going to want to go all the way, like halfway. But 1/3 works. And all I do is squeeze that bottle and cut as straight a line as I can. And you can come in and trim it up and make it perfect if you are concerned with that. Okay. There we go. So we've got this is our top. It's going to fit in to our bottom like that. Now, if yours is a little on the sharp side, you can go ahead and just put some masking tape or duct tape over that so you don't catch yourself on it. I don't find most water bottles are a problem. Sometimes soda bottles are a little thicker material, and that will happen a little more often. Just trimming off any rough edges here. You don't need to be perfect about it. The plants won't mind at all. All right, next step, we need to create our wick. So I have this top. I'm going to grab a screwdriver, maybe an awl. You can just use your scissors, but the idea is that we need to punch a hole in here. So I'm going to put it down on my table. Okay, I'm not going to try and poke through. That would be a bad idea. Put it down on my table, put my screwdriver over the center, and just gently, I'm going to do this on my desk, right on in, push it through, okay? And now I've got a nice hole in my cap. Great. Now I'm going to take my sock, and here's the most challenging bit, and especially if you're doing a soda bottle, you may have to put a couple pieces of sock together, or you can use cotton string or yarn braided instead to kind of make a custom length. You want your strip to be able to sit at the bottom. Let's see, you can probably see it better if I do it here. You want your strip to go from the bottom of your reservoir to the bottom of your media holder. So you kind of want to eyeball that. And then you want it to be longer because we want a tail to come up into our media to help the wicking. So you kind of have to get a sense for that. You might want to get out a ruler or a tape measure and actually measure that. That's very helpful. And as far as how wide your strip should be, about 1 inch. So I like to just kind of measure to my first knuckle on my thumb. You don't want to make this too thin because it won't transfer enough water. But at the same time, you don't want to make it so thick that you end up with a soggy situation. Now, that may take some practice, okay? And you're going to have to kind of keep an eye on it. I usually make a couple of these if I'm starting something new, like I haven't done it before. I haven't done that particular seed or plant before. I'll do a couple and plant them and then kind of get a sense of what works. But I find usually for this size, 1 inch works. For a larger size, you may need to go 2 inches or a little wider, or put a couple. You may want to put a couple holes in your cap and do several wicks. Especially if you're growing something like cucumbers that really like water. All right, so there we go. Now, we're going to take our sock piece, and we're going to, the flat side of the cap, push that in to the flat side of the cap through that hole and pull it out. If you're having trouble, just use a pencil or your screwdriver to push it through. Now, I'm going to tie a knot here because I don't want it to fall back in, and that can happen. And I'm going to leave a nice little tail, okay, so that, so that tail will be in my media helping to spread the liquid out, okay? And then all I do is feed that tail into the neck of my bottle, twist my cap back on, and there we go. I've got my media holder ready, and I've got my reservoir ready. Now, before I go adding any liquid, I've learned one thing. A little bit of gravel in the bottom of any system is going to make it more stable. Sometimes they can get knocked over if they don't have a little extra weight on the bottom. So I always like to do that. Just going to put this in for now, and I'm going to grab the media that I've chosen, which today is a hydroponic growth media using coconut coir and some perlite. I have a big bag of it. It lasts a long time, goes a long way. Share it with others. So I'm just going to put some in here, and you can see I'm leaving it pretty loosely packed. You don't want to do anything to stop the aeration, which will help your roots, or to make it too hard for the liquid to travel through this media. You don't want to fill it all the way, obviously, because if you do that, you could end up with seepage of the liquid over the side, end up with a messy situation. That's all I need to do. Then I would just plant my seeds and pour over my nutrient solution. What if you don't have a nutrient solution? Okay, we're going to talk about that right now. All right, we have compost tea here. Compost is made by combining yard waste like grass clippings and leaves together with kitchen scraps. You keep them warm, you keep them wet, you let them break down and decompose, and bacteria and worms do their job. And you end up with this great black gold, we call it, as gardeners. So you get this really rich fertilizer. It's great in any garden, but you can use it to make hydroponic nutrient solution. And the way to do that is you're going to make a tea from the compost. Basically, you fill a bucket with about 1/3 of the way with compost, pour over some water, okay, and let it sit for 3 or 4 days. Then you're going to get a second bucket. You're going to put some fabric over it, like an old, again, an old piece of towel maybe that's kind of threadbare, something like that. And you're going to pour your compost mixture over that and strain out just the liquid. Now, if you want to, if you have like an old burlap bag or some cheesecloth, you can wrap your compost up in that first and put it into your water and let it sit for a couple days, and it makes it a little bit easier. You don't have to strain it. But that compost tea is great for your houseplants, it's great for the garden, and it's great for your hydroponics. Now, you can also upgrade your usual fertilizer. So if you already have a dry fertilizer that you like, you can add 2 teaspoons of that fertilizer to a gallon of water and mix it up really well. And then add 1 teaspoon of Epsom salt, so you can get pretty much anywhere, to that gallon and stir it. You have to be very careful with fertilizers and with nutrient solutions for hydroponics because the roots are very exposed of your plant. So they could be burned or damaged. You don't want the heavy nutrient solution or heavy fertilizer you might use in your garden in that hydroponic setup. So you want to kind of reduce any chance of hurting your plant by just kind of lowering the concentration, and the Epsom salt helps soften the water to make it a little easier for your plants to absorb. Okay, we're back. I'm going to go ahead and use a commercial hydroponic solution. It was actually sold under the brand Root Farm. I got it at like Home Depot, one of those kinds of places. You can order this sort of thing online. So what I'm going to do is mix it up, and it just was 2 teaspoons of each of these 2 parts, because one is your regular nutrient, the other is a supplement depending on what you're growing. And so 2 teaspoons to a gallon of filtered water, and I've got a ton of nutrient media. So I'm going to start by filling the bottom. And again, you don't have to fill it all the way. It's going to just gently wick as it needs to. So I'm going to put some liquid in there. Just a couple of seeds. And I'm doing a couple of forget-me-nots. Just doing some flowers because I thought those would be nice for the office. Just sprinkle them in there. Okay. Cover them with just a tiny bit of soil. These only need to be 1/8 of an inch, planted to 1/8 of an inch depth. So they're kind of perfect for this. Now, here's the important part. You need to start the wicking. If it's dry up here, the water may not want to flow up there. So you're going to start by just watering the top. This is really the only time that you should need to water from above for this system. And there we go. And we've got our flowers started, okay? Thanks so much for coming to Family Maker Camp today. I hope that you learned a lot about gardening and enjoyed our upcycled Victory Garden workshop today. If you start any of these plants, get your garden going, make some hydroponics, we would love, love, love to see that. Make sure that you post those photos and tag Family Maker Camp so that we can see all your amazing work. If you make a Victory Garden poster, I would really love to see that. Make sure you tag that as well. I look forward to seeing you all again really soon, okay? In the meantime, keep healthy, keep safe, and keep